Your story matters, don't let it fade. When everything changed, you were made.
When everything changed, I discovered that numerous times everything changed. So I'm going to take you back from when one of the most amazing changes in my life happened that basically kind of put everything in a nutshell. The first time when I'm in the delivery room and I'm getting so excited that I'm going to have a little baby, I don't know if it's a boy or a girl, and I'm in the delivery room and out pops the most beautiful girl, the most perfect Savannah you could ever imagine. And I looked at her and I knew that she was made in the image of God and that she was absolutely perfect. And I haven't been wrong. She's been perfect for 20 some years now. And I got the opportunity to have another one and didn't know if it was going to be a boy or a girl. In the delivery room, she pops out. And I am so damn happy I had two girls and I didn't have a son. And I couldn't figure out why. Everyone's like, oh, you want a little boy that's going to be football player and take after you. And I'm like, no, I want a little girl. And I want two little girls, and I got it. So I thank God every day for these two little girls. My story goes back to when I'm this little bitty baby boy made in the image of God. And I'm perfect. And I'm exactly how I'm supposed to be. And then all of a sudden, I look up and I see my parents, who are my caregivers. And they are going to teach me, and they are going to help me into this world. And I relied on them. I trusted them. And then I go a little further in my journey, and all of a sudden I have a babysitter, or I have a preschool teacher, or I have a coach, or any of these people that I'm looking up to going, okay, help me. Help me become who I'm supposed to be. Because I started out this little bitty perfect baby, and now I'm working my way into life. And so when I was younger, I felt like I was perfect. I thought I was like this cool kid everybody liked. And I started watching my parents. And I'd be like, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. They'd get into an argument about something stupid. Now all of a sudden I got a sister and I got a brother, and they're getting all the attention. And I'm not. And I'm going through life. As I go from place to place to place, I start not being this perfect little baby. Started getting angry. We moved a lot. I lived in 20 different houses by the time I was 18, 7 different school districts. And obviously I'm a little bit taller than average. I was a foot taller than most people starting off when I was very little. So when I'd go into that kindergarten class, I was a foot taller. Teachers would treat me like I was 2 years older than I was. They would expect me to act differently than the other kids. So when you get into a little scrap and I'd punch them in the face because they were stealing whatever I had, I'd get in trouble and I'd get suspended. And all of a sudden, I was going from raising my hand every time the teacher asked a question because I was so proud that I knew and I wanted to, show off that I was doing what the teacher told me to do. And I'd look over on the side and there'd be these girls that'd be like snickering, look at the little teacher's pet. Or the guys would, tease me in the recess. And you got to remember, and I watched my girls, and one thing I did was I was never going to move my girls. I was going to let them go through the school district the whole way through, and I did. Because I think it's very important. When you move, and a lot of people say I was in the military, my parents, but I wasn't. My dad just didn't know what he wanted to do. So he'd get fired and we'd go somewhere else, and he'd get fired and we'd go somewhere else. And so that's kind of how this life of nomad. So every time I go into school, who do I become friends with? The outcasts, the kids that weren't like in the cool clique. And so I started to learn to be able to be around everybody, all kinds of people. it didn't matter. So I really, that was kind of a good thing, that I'm grateful to God that I got that opportunity, so I can go in and fit anywhere, even though I'm 6'6", and most people are 5'10", or 6 foot or whatever. But I'm going through school, and it got to a point where, and I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I went from getting A's and B's to getting D's, C's, and F's. I hated to go to school. There was one time my mom took me to a dentist appointment, dropped me off. I ran in, I literally sat in the bushes outside the school and didn't go into school the whole entire afternoon. I didn't feel comfortable walking in and saying I'm coming in from a dentist appointment. This created a lot of anger, like crazy anger, intense anger. I used to abuse my little brother. I used to abuse my sister. Literally punch her and cause bruises on her arms. I ruined family trips because I was so angry, punching holes in the wall. I couldn't control it. It was unbelievable. The only thing I had, which is crazy, is I had this unbelievable adrenaline rush, and I wanted to do crazy stuff. Climb mountains, climb trees, ride motorcycles at 120 miles an hour, ride bulls. I rode bulls. I rode broncs. I calf roped, team roped, rode horses all over the West, and was still this really angry boy. And so I was about 13 years old, and me and a guy went down into our basement. We grabbed a 6-pack of beer, and we said, we're drinking this. I got through about my 1.5 beers, and it was warm Rainier. Oh. I got through it, and all of a sudden I felt this feeling. And I'm like, that's it. That's God. This is God. This is where I've heard all about this guy that's up here. And I'm like, that's it. So from that time on, about 13 years old, getting intoxicated, or after my first sexual experience, those two things were like everything to me. And so from then until 29 years old, that's all I cared about. How was I going to make it through life? Well, I loved sports. Like I said, I was an adrenaline junkie. And being an angry man, when you've got coaches screaming at you and you fight back against them and you're a big dude, you start to become really good at it. So I got a scholarship to the Wisconsin. I started at right tackle and right guard for 3 years. Had great aspirations to play in the NFL. And all of a sudden, draft time comes around, and I get drafted. And I go into the NFL, and I play for the New Orleans Saints. And my second year, I'm starting because of injury, and I'm going against an all-pro. Tim Harris played for the Packers. You guys might remember him. I went the whole entire game. Not one tackle he had, not one sack. One time, he went around me and he got his hand on the shoulder of the quarterback, and the quarterback threw an incomplete pass. Not a major thing, but it was what's called a hurry. And but I had a great game, and I am so jacked. I'm going out of the locker room, going to see my family, going to see my dad, and I walk up to my family, give my mom a hug, my brother a high five. I'm just jacked. And I lean in to give my dad a hug, and he said, if only you would have got that hurry. And I went, fuck. I can't do anything right. I can't please you. There is such unbelievable, just my gut dropped. And I was done. I went home, flew home to New Orleans, called some buddies, got some drugs, got as high as I could get. And that started my pain pill addiction. So that stopped me from wanting to play. Every man in here knows when you're a little boy, you dream of going up to the big leagues. You get there, and I said, I'm done. That's how powerful my dad was for me. He was very difficult to please. He was very unsure of himself. He could not stand for anything. I always loved that song. It says, if you can't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. He fell for anything. He moved us all over the place. He was extremely angry. He was violent. He did hit me a few times. But the verbal abuse, the repetitive messages going into my head that I was not good enough, since I was a little bitty perfect baby, just kept ringing through all the way through my whole life. So I ended up getting married to a beautiful woman, and we were living the life of drugs and alcohol. And it was right at the end of my career. I had walked off the field, said I'm done, went home, got going again, went to try and get back into the NFL, and I didn't get in. So when I didn't get in, it kind of like ended her dreams of being married to a wealthy football player. And her and I struggled greatly, and she had a cocaine problem, and she said she wanted to go to treatment. So I said, okay, I'll take you to treatment. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We go into the treatment center, and at the treatment center, they said, we got a bed for you too. I said, fuck that. I don't have a problem. Are you kidding me? And he goes, well, I think you do. And he convinced me, this guy from God in my life changed my whole life, because he sat me down and he said, please come to my outpatient group. And on Monday, I went to his outpatient group. I quit drinking on Monday, didn't drink anything until Thursday. And he said, don't quit the pills yet. So I quit the drinking. Thursday, he said, okay, you're going to go home this weekend. And he goes, I want you to quit the pills. So I go home on Thursday. He goes, don't plan anything. He said, you're going to be miserable. So I get home on Thursday, go in bed, drink lots of water, do what he tells me to do. It was one of the most horrific weekends I've ever had. Every joint in my body felt like it was going to be ripped apart. I felt I had cramps everywhere. I was sweating like crazy. I was curled up in a ball, and I just was miserable. But I made it through till Monday, because I promised him I wouldn't take anything till Monday. And I went in and met with him, and he said, okay, we got you off the drugs. Now you got to just not take the next one. And he gave me a program. I went to a recovery program for 5-6 nights a week for 5 or 6 years. Got a really strong base, and I'm going along. Now, here's the thing. I had gotten divorced. Now I'm remarried after about a couple years in the program to a woman who's also in the program. But there were times where I just was, I would explode when she would do something. And so, of course, what do? You go to anger management. So I went to anger management. Kept going to anger management. Kept going. She ended up having her own issues, and I decided to leave the marriage, become a father, single father. I wanted my home to be extremely positive. No screaming, no throwing shit, nothing. Tried to get a really good environment for my girls, and I was successful at it. After several years, I met a woman, fell in love, got married. Same thing. I'm just raging out of control, throwing stuff through the window, squealing my tires out of the driveway, going for rides down in the country, hundreds of miles an hour, totally trying to take my life, which I had tried to do earlier. I didn't put that in the story, but I did try to take my life twice before I got sober. Was just, what in the hell is going on? Well, this is where everything changed for this story. My ex-wife convinced me that I needed to go to anger management, so I go and find this guy, and I'm seeing him for about 7 months. Every week I went, and I'm like, I am determined to fix this thing. We're in this session, and we're talking, and all of a sudden he looked at me and he said, Glenn, you don't have an anger problem. He goes, your anger is absolutely right on par. He goes, you got a trauma problem. And I'm like, what? I haven't had anything major happen in my life. He goes, just being in the NFL is trauma enough. He goes, but let me explain. We have been doing research for years, and we sit down with these patients, and they all have very similar traits as PTSD, which most people know. That's like from the military, or a woman getting raped, or a really bad car accident, or somebody dying. You have these traumatic things that change your brain that cause you to act in a really unrational manner. That's a typical PTSD. Well, he said we have all these people coming into our offices, and they're having the same symptoms. But why? He said it's called complex PTSD. That has changed my life because I started to work on calming the chaos in my brain, realizing that all those messages that I was getting, and I went back and looked at every one of my wives, they were spitting images of my dad. When they would say something, I would take it as my dad saying it. And I'm begging for love from them. And all I wanted was love from my wives. I wanted them to love me. And they were just going on their own trauma, their own wounds, and they would raise something up, and I would explode. And I like to tell people this, that the analogy that really helped me was when we go to the breakfast table as a kid, and you knock over that glass of milk, and your dad's screaming at you, "Damn it, we're going to be late again. I'm going to be late for work. Son of a bitch, you got to stop doing this." And the whole way on the car ride to school, he's yelling at you. When you get home, you're going to clean the whole goddamn house. Da-da-da, you're grounded for a month. You go into the school and you go, "Oh, I feel like a piece of shit." That memory goes into a certain part of our brain. 20 years later, you're sitting with your wife and you knock over a glass of milk and she gives you a look, and all of a sudden you go and you explode because you relive that moment. And it makes you feel like a piece of crap. Same scenario, you knock over the glass of milk, your dad screams and yells at you, you get in the car, he goes, "Hey, Glenn, I am so sorry I got angry. It's not your fault. It was an accident. We're going to need to do something so that it doesn't happen again because I can't afford to be late for work." I get out of the car, I go to school, and I feel all right because I made a mistake. I'm not a piece of shit. That memory goes into a different part of your brain. So down the road, when you knock over that milk with your wife and she gets mad, you can say, "I'm really sorry. It was an accident, and I will try to do better next time. I'm really sorry that we have to clean this up right now." Makes all the difference in the world. Now I'm able to go out and get in these situations, and people will, and I can feel it. And I have a technique where I rub the inside of my fingers, and I think of a picture up in the mountains where I find the most peace, and I just go there. And I'm like, "It's okay. You're okay. You're good enough. You belong. You need to be here. You're a good dude." And the more I can do that, the more I find people that are going to love me back when I go through that, and it's understandable. So this is my story. I've got a lot more of it, but I am here on this stage right now for one reason and one reason only. It's through the grace of God, because there is no way in hell I should be here. When I was 30 years old, I started bawling because I didn't know what to do. I thought I'd be dead at 30. I looked at my dad when he was 30 years old, and I thought he was older than hell. And I never wanted to be old like that. And now I've done it twice. And I'm hoping for another 30. And what I really had to do was go through all these horrible things to find out how to work my brain so that now I can go out and help as many people. I hope you all, got something from my story, and it's, we all aren't the same. So, if you did, great. I'm just hoping that my story and what made a difference for me can potentially make a difference for you. Thank you.
Your story matters.